What's up, guys? Today, talking about injuries. We're not necessarily expecting you to have an injury at the minute or have one come up, but it's really important to know how to deal with issues that you might have had in the past that may just sort of be recurring throughout this training program, or issues that might start to crop up, because there's ways to deal with it. There's things that we should be doing, things that you certainly shouldn't be doing, and there's communication that's needed across board.
I think injuries is something that even if you haven't got one, you need to watch this and pay attention, because you may be avoiding an exercise because of the niggle. We may be performing an exercise but not feeling it where we want to. There's all these sort of things that we're going to talk about that's going to crop up, especially when we change the plan and go a little bit more intense, try and go on a bit of a diet, try and do a little bit more. It's probably going to happen at some point that there's going to be a niggle here and there, unfortunately.
That's where the sort of pre-qualifying bit that we had for this, in terms of you should already be eating well, you should be recovering well, you should be training well. That's really important, and we'll get into why as we move on. So now this slide is just basically the stuff that you needed to do before starting. We've mentioned this to all of you anyway, but just making it clear that you can start this program if you've got injuries or issues. We just need to know how to manage it. We need to know what they are. We need to deal with the existing issues. Should have been cleared by your GP. You should have been cleared by a physio if it's a musculoskeletal issue, and we should have a clear picture of what we can do. You can still follow the same plan, but that might mean swapping out some exercises and replacing them with a more suitable alternative for you. Obviously, if you are dealing with physios for ongoing injury, or medical professionals for anything, we want a line of communication there with them. That's going to be really important. So make sure that that's an open communication across board between us as coaches, them as your health and injury professionals, rehab professionals, and obviously yourself. So that's that bit done. Let's move on. Progressive injuries. Now, what we will find on this is that some of you, not many, but some of you will start to get little niggles crop up, little issues that start to appear. Now, that's partly based on the fact that for a lot of you, this will be a big jump up in your recovery, just might not be adequate. It's probably the highest volume that a lot of you have done on a training program, and potentially alongside some of the lowest calories. So certain things that we need to be doing. When we get injuries, it's because there's too much load too fast without adequate recovery. And if this plan has gone I know that we spoke about not going to failure in week one on most things, but I know what you guys are like. I know what I've been like in the past. You start your training program and you want to go all into it. You want to put everything in straight away. You want to do your higher intensity training. You want to lift as heavy as you can for every set, every rep that you can. You want to go to your absolute limits. And you sort of want to skip your rest days. You're not that bothered about your sleep and about the stress and about these other sides of it. If that's you, you are setting yourself up for these progressive overuse type injuries that will crop up.
I think because as well there's new exercise selection on it, there's different types of exercises. Going into an exercise that you might not necessarily be 100% comfortable with, if you're trying to push yourself on it too soon, and we are trying to get you to push yourself, don't get me wrong, but you need to make sure that you're moving correctly to start off with. That happens a lot. Josh there talks about load. It's really important that we are still feeling the muscles that we need to feel. And I think throughout this, it's about self-awareness, but you need to be identifying with your coach. I can't feel this exercise where I think I should. Where am I supposed to feel it? Have I got it? Is this right? Am I moving properly on it? That sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, we can adapt the plan, obviously. So say you're doing a bench press. You can't do the bench press because, one, you're not feeling it in your chest. Two, your shoulders are getting sore, your wrists are sore. That might just be a case at that point that we pull the bench press out, we swap it for an exercise that's more appropriate. It might be, and much more likely, it's that your setup just isn't quite right, your movement's not quite right. But while we're learning that, while we're learning how to move effectively and how to really execute that movement properly, then taking it out and focusing on another exercise that is much more comfortable for this phase might be more appropriate. Yeah. Being aware of why this issue is happening is so important. So whether it's down to loading, whether it's down to movement dysfunction, absolutely key. So yeah, regardless of what progressive injury you've got coming up, 99% of the time, you're still absolutely fine to train, absolutely fine to follow the program. but there will be little switches that we need to make. So at least speaking directly to your coaches about these issues so that we can make the swaps. Or obviously, if it's something that's a little bit more serious, a bit more long-term, then speaking to your coaches and your physios and medical professionals about what the best approach is going to be. Now, to minimise injury risk, obviously we do our best to avoid these big leaps in training volume and intensity. And we progressively build. Hence, on this program, we've got week 1 where you're getting into it and you're trying to cope with all the volume. Week 2 where you start to push it. Week 3 where it's a hard week. And then we put in a deload. So from the training program point of view, we need to make sure that we're managing load. And obviously throughout this plan, we are doing, but there's still a risk that for you, if you're starting a little bit harder than expected, that still might be a risk factor. It's still something that might mean you need to pull back a little bit earlier. Including enough overall recovery in terms of recovery days, active rest, recovery sessions, deload blocks. We've obviously looked after that. That's been important throughout. One thing that's often missed is understanding your own high-risk exercises. So if you're particularly tall, you've not got good mobility, then you might find that you always seem to get a bit of pain whenever you go heavy on a squat. That might be because that is one of your exercises that is a high risk. So again, this is something that your PT will talk to you about, but you need to let us know how you're feeling through all these movements. If you're wanting to feel something in your legs and you're only feeling it in your mid-back, then obviously that's going to be an issue and it's something that you need to communicate. It's going to be down to this. We don't expect you to need to know it, but it's about communicating with us.
On this sort of program, we're not trying to develop you as athletes or anything. We're trying to make sure that this is getting the most bang for your buck in terms of your exercise selection. So it may mean adaptations and stuff. If someone, for example, knows they can't go heavy on the squat, haven't yet gone heavy on the squat, haven't yet done a deadlift off the floor, it's about sort of, because you might have a weakness, you might have a pre-existing injury that we need to work around. What we need to do by minimising the risk is maybe make sure that the exercise selection that you push on, for example, is the ones that we know you're safe with. And that is a small adjustment, especially for your coach. You just switch an exercise over. It's fine to do, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And that's the way that we want to approach this, is make sure that you're not, because what the risk is that you go, oh no, we'll learn technique on this, but you spend a lot of time learning technique on these lifts, and you're not getting any stronger, you're not building any muscle.
Which
so
is
yes, you need to do
term.
it, but for this phase, it's probably not the best place to put it, or at least it goes alongside.
You probably do it as an extra. You probably do the other workout, and maybe do that as an extra.
We've got that. So maximising recovery from nutrition and sleep. These big recovery things as well. So one's about managing load. The other two is managing the actual recovery. And if you're not sleeping and your nutrition's poor in terms of quality of nutrition, I'm not talking about energy here. So I'm not talking just about you hitting your calories every day. That's great. But if you've got poor quality nutrition, you're not getting vitamins, minerals, you're not eating any veg, that's going to have an impact on injury risk. So just to be aware of that. I wanted to cover this just because it's important to understand the difference. We're talking on this slide about more overuse type injuries. If you go over on your ankle, drop a dumbbell on your foot, you're in any sort of accident, that's going to be a different approach. That's an acute injury. It's not related to your training, and it is going to influence your training. So usually it's pull some of your exercises out. A lot of the time we can still train alongside this. Obviously, if you've hurt your toe, most exercises are still going to be fine to do. But it's understanding what is and what isn't. So again, any injuries that come up, you need to let your coach know. We will probably need to make some exercise swaps there.
A lot of the time with acute injuries, intensity of your training sessions can be still equally as high, depending on what it is. If you've got your leg, obviously, it's not great. Absolutely, but, we can still make sure that we're getting that upper body done. I don't think because you're injured, you can't come into the gym as the top and bottom of it here.
Yeah, absolutely. So, but if it's something pretty serious, obviously, you're going to have external professionals working on it. That line of communication, again, needs to be open. You might need to step away from training if this does happen, but not often. Now, adapting the plan. Again, we know that we can adapt it just to make sure that we are getting, top-end results. We've spoke about this already, so I'm not going to spend a long time on it. But, for example, bench press, if you've got a wrist injury, might not be suitable, or you've got wrist issues, flexibility issues, you can still do a dumbbell press and get at least the same stimulation on the muscle. You can get the same output that you want, the same adaptation. It's just with a different tool. So making sure that we've got that in is obviously really important. And switching your workouts. If you wake up with a sore back one day, but you're supposed to be doing heavy deadlifts on that day, it might be an idea to swap that to your shoulders and arms day and do your heavy deadlifts the following day.
I had a client on the phone this morning actually, something similar. He just said, you know, I stick to the plan I did chest 2 days ago, because they missed a day of catching up. Now he's got to go and do it again. You know, you are able to adapt this plan. You know, you look at your calendar on a Monday, fit it in where you think is appropriate. Try not to put the same day twice back to back, but you know, making sure that you've got that varied is important.
Yeah, and that might happen as well. I mean, on this plan, because the training volume is quite high, you will have, if you swap something around, you're almost certainly going to have at least 2 days where one of the muscle groups is worked back to back. Not an issue, you just need to manage it, speak to us, we'll tell you how to cope with that. Now, when to pull back, if you're ill, if you're sick, now if you're feeling a little bit under the weather, you can do some sort of low intensity training, but you certainly shouldn't be doing anything particularly hard. If you know that you're ill or you've been vomiting or struggling to just cope with day-to-day stuff, training's not a good idea. Yeah, training's just simply not. If you've got some form of injury, you don't really know where it's come from, but you're struggling with day-to-day movement, you can come in to do some sort of mobility work and things, but you don't come in to do a heavy training session. If you've got pain more than, say, a 4 out of 10 during an exercise, you might need to swap that exercise. You certainly need to make them aware of it. So say that you're feeling a pull in your chest as you're doing a chest press, or I'll stop using chest, it sounds like that's all I train. Say you're feeling a pull in your quad as you're doing a leg extension, that's not a normal muscle DOMS, that's painful, then obviously it might be a point to step away from that exercise on that day. Might need to replace it with something else, or there might be an injury, you might need to pull back from your session in total. If the day after training you always have the same issues and it's more than, say, a 4 or 5 out of 10, it's affecting your day-to-day movement, and you're not sure what it is, but you know that it's that particular training session, you need to speak to us. And obviously, if you've got a rehab professional that you're working with, a physio or sports therapist, then obviously it might be a point to all have the discussion about why that's going on.
But initially, it is us first.
That depends what the issue is. But
It's better speak to me first.
It's about communication. I think that's a big point. So if you've got pre-existing injuries, what we want to know is what's the injury. Straight away, we look at overcurving injuries. We look at reviewing loading and recovery. Is your loading appropriate? Is your recovery appropriate? If it is, then we can get a bit deeper in terms of looking at how you're moving, what's your flexibility, what's your weaknesses. We'll do all of that. But it then comes down to splitting it into 2 areas. We want to train for maximum effectiveness on this plan. So you want to be able to do some form of heavy lifting, which obviously might mean swapping the exercise, getting rid of the exercise that you're not feeling good at, and putting in exercises that you are feeling okay with. And we also, alongside that, want to correct the issue, but that's going to be something a little bit different. So you need to get the stimulation for muscle growth, or whatever training adaptation that you're looking for, and you want to correct the issue that's going on alongside it. Focus, most of your time is going to go on during this phase, is going to go on the actual training. You're trying to train hard with exercises that you can cope with, but you are going to spend a little bit of time on these corrections. And when you're not in this sort of training phase, that'll probably be switched around and spend a hell of a lot of time on the corrections as well. It's about combining both. Now, if you're starting to feel an issue come up, it's the exact same protocol. So again, look at your loading, look at your range of movement, look at any mechanical issues that you've got, weaknesses, and make sure that you're training both for actual progression now and for getting over these injuries. Now, mindset during an injury, what people often do is they'll get their injury, they'll get a bit of an issue, and they'll say, I can't go in because I can't train. That's absolutely not the right way to do it. What I'd suggest, for me personally, this always works. You look at how this actually affects your goals. Now, this is a body composition program. So for the most part, most injuries, most overuse issues, or most injuries that mean that you can't do a certain exercise have really no negative on this actual program on what the end goal is. Yes, you have to take the exercise out, but that's not necessarily going to affect how much muscle you can build, how much body fat
How
you
many
can
calories
lose.
you can burn.
What opportunities does it present? Well, if you've got a recurring issue that keeps coming up, you don't know why, this gives us an opportunity to look at it a little bit deeper, make sure that next time you're on this phase, that issue is not going to come up. Is there a way that you can achieve all of the initial goals, which is getting in great shape, alongside making sure that next time you do this sort of plan, this issue is much less likely to come up? Yes, probably. So injuries aren't perfect. They will increase stress, but we can plan around it. We can organise things, and we can, we can still achieve a hell of a lot with a couple of injuries or issues.
I think as well, you've got to think about this, like if you're on a plan, if you was a footballer or you was a runner or you was in any sort of sport and they got injured, they won't not train, they go in and work on rehabilitation. You should not be getting injured. And we get this quite a lot, I'm not coming in today, I've got a bad back. Well, if you've got a bad back, it might be a reason for you to come into the gym. Yes, you don't have to do the same type of session. Yeah. You need to come into the gym. We can maybe loosen it off for you, stretch it out. It's all part of it. This is all going to, unfortunately, it is something that we probably are going to get at some point during training, is an injury. And if it's a shoulder injury, then that's fine. Come and do a little bit of a different type of session, some cardio. Don't not train and miss sessions and miss what you're doing just because you've got a little niggle or you've got a niggle. If it's something where you can't walk, obviously, that's a little bit different. But from the majority of injuries that we see present itself in a gym in this environment, definitely trainable around.
100%. So external advice, like I said, if you are working with a physiotherapist, anything like that, make sure that there's a line of communication open. The last thing that you want to do is have one thing coming from us, one thing coming from them, no one knowing what the sort of middle ground is, or you taking what you want to hear from your physio and what you want to hear from us without the actual structured plan. So make sure that we have communication open with them. That's always the best option. So guys, we're not expecting any of this to come up, obviously, but it might do. If it does, it's fine. There are ways to deal with it. That's what this presentation is about, is to make sure that you guys aren't being demotivated by any issues coming up. You know that you can still achieve your goals and how to actually deal with that, because long term, in terms of achieving your fitness goal, it's something that you're going to need to know.